Merry Christmas, everybody. I am Tommy, and you are on the lifeboat. Hope everyone's having a happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating today. One of those days, right? We do this every year. I'm not sure if you knew that. I don't think I've missed a Christmas going live on YouTube since we started. It's a chance for us all to get together and sort of hang out. I've got a great audience that interacts. There's a lot of connection here. However, this is an actual story. Sometimes we just go live so that we can all hang out. But there's a lot going on. Let's say hi to people. Diane, how are you? Sandy Wendy, good to see you. Jamie Palmer, what's happening? So here's the deal. This is going to be one of those cases where the victims are going to get blamed. Hello, Lilac Lime. Good to see you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. This is going to be one of those cases where they blame the victims. And hey, Johnny Scoville's here. That would be the Johnny Scoville. It's disturbing anytime you see the people who are victims of the crime get blamed. This happens a lot in cases where women were victims, and it used to happen for years, right? They would blame the person that was assaulted. What was she wearing, right? You know, that kind of foul stuff should have stopped a long time ago. Murph, good to see you. It gets a little bit more complicated when you start looking at a case like this one. Hello, Renee B. You are not late. You are right on time. Merry Christmas. In this case that is going on with the death of Michelle and Rob Reiner at the hands of their son, what the hell did just happen? Oh, there it is. With the death of Michelle and Rob Reiner and their son Nick being accused of this, stories are coming out, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. TMZ is a propaganda arm for attorneys. There's a bunch of attorneys that work really closely with Harvey Levin. Harvey Levin and his partner in the Two Angry Men broadcast are very good friends. Hello, Audra. They're very close friends with Alan Jackson, who is the defense attorney in this. And Alan Jackson is a defense attorney of note. Good Lord, they're working on Christmas Day. God bless them. They got doing construction on a high rise on Christmas Day. God bless them. This is going to be a leak machine. We're going to see all kinds of stuff that's put out in the media for the purpose of making everyone in America start to think some kind of way. And the first salvo was when they came out and said, well, he's schizophrenic. And the number of people that are basically equating schizophrenia to making you a murderer. There are plenty of people on this channel. There are plenty of people who are friends of mine who are schizophrenic, that suffer from mental illness, who are medicated. They live fantastic lives. They're beautiful people. It's not a disease that turns you into a murderer. Although that was the first narrative, right? Oh, you know what? He's not guilty, man. The guy's schizophrenic. And then the articles start coming out that there's no way he's going to be found competent to stand trial. There's no way that this is going to be anything other than temporary insanity. He's going to be found not guilty. The new one is this. The new one is that couple of things. Number one, Nick had an allowance. Now, we guessed about this. The kid didn't have a job. Of course he had an allowance, right? TMZ is swaying public opinion. It's what they do, right? And they were doing it for Diddy, and they were doing it they do it for a lot of people. But they're not just a platform. They're a propaganda machine. I promise you they are. So they're talking now about how this guy had this guy being Nick, the son of Michelle and Rob Reiner, the deceased. He had an allowance from mom and dad. That allowance was $10,000 a month. Put a 2 in the chat if you wouldn't mind, a $10,000 a month allowance. That's an awful lot of money. So people are now blaming them because, if the kid had a $10,000 a month allowance, obviously he could buy whatever drugs he wanted. That's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. It really is. It may not cover everyone's drug habit, but it's a lot of money. And he also did not have any bills. So his cell phone, mom and dad paid it. Allegedly, his credit cards, mom and dad paid. He lived in his own house, but it was a guest house on the property that they had in Brentwood. So he had a Brentwood, they stink because there are too many lawyers involved. I'll tell you what, I think Shakespeare summed it up the best when he said, let's kill the lawyers first. Honestly, it's not that I dislike lawyers. I dislike the one that I married. But yeah, I mean, lawyers' jobs are to make somebody look guilty, right? If you happen to be a prosecutor, or to make somebody look not guilty if you happen to be a defense attorney. And Alan Jackson's a fantastic defense attorney. and he's also friends, right, with an individual that and he's friends with Harvey Levin. These guys are putting stories out that are definitely changing how people are looking at this. When this first happened, there was outrage about what Nick did. This was barbaric. And when you look at the small amount of information that is being leaked out from the autopsy, we're not seeing a lot of it, but we're hearing things like the time of death was about a minute apart. And these were vicious attacks. And by all accounts, from people, and TMZ will talk about this, people close to the case. Who the hell do you think that might be? Right? You don't think it's Alan Jackson, do you? Or somebody in his office. But people close to the case say that this is a unbelievably vicious attack. And I've said this before. If you killed someone without a gun, it's gonna be a vicious attack. Taking someone's life isn't an easy thing unless you're squeezing a trigger. If you're hitting someone with a bat, it's gonna be vicious. If you're using a blunt object, it's gonna be vicious. And it's gonna look like a horror scene. Blood's gonna get cast all over the place. But if you're doing it with an edged instrument, if you're doing it with a knife, it's gonna be horrific. It's gonna be as nasty as you've ever seen in any movie, because that's just how these deaths occur. And the fact that they were laying in bed, they were victims just waiting to happen, right? Allegedly. So now they're saying because he didn't have any bills, the fact that his parents were paying $10,000 a month kind of makes them responsible for this. And the next phase 2 of this, because they're coming out, and you watch, they're going to keep coming out. They're going to keep popping out, right? Boom, 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 all the way down the line. We talked about this on yesterday's show. There has already been millions of people who are hearing all of the stuff that is being said, and it is having a change in how people view things. I can tell by comments. I can tell by how people react to the things that I talk about. But the new one is this. There's a story that is resurfaced. And this story came out of the mouth of the alleged killer of Michelle and Rob Reiner's son, Nick. And in an interview, he talked about an acid trip, LSD, right, that he had done. And he said he had done this before, but he started tripping with a friend. And these last, it can go, somewhere between 8 to 10 hours. If he took way too much, it could go, 10 to 12 hours. But he started tripping, and his friend decided he was going to leave. And normally, anything that you're doing while under the influence of LSD, if it changes dramatically, sometimes that can make life tough. So if you're sitting and you have somebody that you can relate to because they're tripping too, and that person decides, you know what, I'm out of here, it can set you off in a bad direction. I did see that they added more charges to Russell Brand, and I will be doing a story on this. I don't know if we'll get it out today. If not, we will most assuredly get it out tomorrow, but I will be covering the new charges against Russell Brand. We're going to do a show on that. But yes, they did. They did it on the 23rd. But thank you. I'm glad that you are here. So the acid trip starts going bad for this kid. And if I had to guess, I would say that whoever tripping with him went, whoa, this guy is killing my buzz. If you happen to be using that drug around someone that start acting erratic, the first thing that you're going to want to do is get the hell away from them. Thank you for the support. Look at that, 19 months. Good Lord. Diane, you've been here a hot minute. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate the support. It means the world to me, and it keeps us continuing this channel. So he decides that he's going to take off and leave Nick. This is Nick's story that he's telling. And the trip starts going bad. Now, the term bad trip people use a lot. That comes in different varieties. There's times where people take it and instantly are in terror, like from the time it comes on. And then there are times that you're having a good time and something changes. And that change, if you ever happen to be under the influence of this and a fight breaks out, those kind of emotions when you're under the influence of LSD, and I mean people throwing punches, it can turn a very, what could be a pleasurable time for people that enjoy that substance into a virtual nightmare. It is a dissociative drug, so it's hard sometimes to differentiate between reality and fiction. And when those kind of emotions, fight, flight, those kind of things start coming into you, you're not really equipped to deal with it in the normal sense of the word because you're under a pretty heavy substance. And I've talked about this many times on the channel, but I've done a ton of this substance back in the day. He starts having a bad time. And the story goes that he told his dad that he was having, that he was on acid and that he was having a bad trip. And according to Nick, his father said that, you know what, he had done some acid in his life. Kristen Melinda, good to see you. And his dad, instead of calling the police or calling a hospital or doing anything like that, he did what I would have done. And what a lot of parents probably would have done if they're familiar with this substance, he took his kid and got him into a room where there wasn't a lot of bright lights and got him to lay down on a bed. Then he laid down a couple of feet next to him. The two of them stared at the ceiling, and his dad started talking. And his dad started talking because this is kind of what you do when someone's having a bad time. If you can engage them, if you can get them to listen to you, and in the process, if you can change your voice and get it so that you're a little bit more calmed down, you can get to a point where you can pull someone out of this. And for about 8 hours, his father sat there and talked him through a bad time on LSD. He is being villainized for this. There are people that are saying, well, the reason he's dead is because he knew his kid did drugs and he didn't do anything about him. If this is a substance that you have taken before, calling an ambulance on your kid who's tripping is a terrifying concept, because knowing what this drug does, lights coming, people coming in going, I need to do this, and sticking stethoscopes in your face, and let's get a blood pressure cuff on. This is the kind of stuff of literal nightmares for somebody on this substance. This may not make sense to a lot of people, but what his dad did is pretty responsible, in my opinion. It's also a leap to go from that to they knew he was smoking meth every single day. Maybe they did. But if they did, it doesn't mean that they're responsible for their own deaths. But if you keep planting these stories, if the stories keep coming out to make it look like this is a bad dad, this was bad parenting, the reason that they're dead is because they didn't handle business. This is a narrative that's gaining traction. And I can tell you by my comments, man, there are people going in there going, yeah, well, you know what? If they had been better parents, this wouldn't have happened. Man, don't say shit like that. Honestly, man, think about what you're saying. Just popping in to hit like and say hello. Festivities with the kiddo. Merry Christmas, everyone. You know what? I'm envious. Those Christmases with young kids were some of the best times of my life. Honestly, I think back to Christmases with Spanks Calhoun. By the way, I spoke with Spanky this morning, and he told me to tell everyone hello. He said he pops in from time to time. He hasn't been leaving comments because he's a busy guy, but he will be coming in shortly to say hello to some people. He said he'd be in here in the next week or two. Merry Christmas. I'm glad that you are here. So this is going to continue, and it's going to continue because this is a situation where if you believe that all of these people that are reporting this news are reporters, right, and that simply what they do is report the news, then you kind of don't understand how this goes down. If you are, by the way, I was corrected by somebody. It was the 3 mile zone, not the 30 mile zone. Apparently it was called, hey, Yankee Kyle, good to see you here. Apparently it was the 3 mile zone. That's what TMZ was. TMZ has to have sources everywhere, right? Everywhere. So you do favors for people, and you do favors for attorneys, and then attorneys do favors for you. And these sources close to the case kind of crap, that's the kind of stuff that goes on constantly, right? The Two Angry Men podcast. Somebody remind me of the attorney's name that does that with Harvey Levin. He's Diddy's #1 advisor. His daughter was one of Diddy's attorneys, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I do think he was in a meth psychosis. I'll be honest with you. And I'm basing this just off of things that people said, that he was doing mountains of meth. Meth doesn't help people who are mentally ill. It is a very rugged drug with people who suffer from mental illness. Lack of sleep is a dangerous thing for healthy individuals who don't have bad brain chemistry. And I don't mean bad as in Mark Garagos. Thank you, Diane. And I don't mean bad as in mallow. I mean bad as in they have a mental illness. There is mental disease there. Methamphetamine is such a dangerous drug for people who already suffer from mental illness. But if you're going to blame somebody, he was going to a dual diagnosis clinic. Allegedly he was. For $70,000 a month, they should have been testing this kid once a week. And if they knew that every time they tested him, he was failing for methamphetamine, crystal methamphetamine, then giving this kid psych meds on top of that was a recipe for disaster. And that's not the parents' fault, right? That isn't Michelle and Rob's fault. And if they knew that their kid was on drugs, and the word condone is getting thrown around a lot. My dad knew that I did heroin. There was no way to hide it. He didn't know when I was young, but by the time I was in my 30s, the whole world knew I was on heroin. And my parents knew. I'm a 30-year-old man. What are they going to do? Call the cops on me? For real. I mean, what do you do at that point? You pray. Every time they see you, they go, oh, come on, man. What are you doing? You're a father. You're this. They talk to me, but you can't stop a 30-year-old person from doing drugs. The argument now is this. You could have stopped him by cutting off the $10,000, a month. You could have stopped him by kicking him out of your house. Well, they did that. And It didn't work. He went on the streets homeless, not just because of tough love, which they did do at one time, because I heard it come out of Rob Reiner's mouth. But they also did it because they would send him to these incredibly expensive rehabilitation centers that were further up the food chain. I've talked about this a lot on the boat. The low levels of rehab are not intrusive. They're a lot less like a jail than they are a retreat. They're a lot less like a jail than they are a day spa. And they're not, I'm sorry, everyone hate me, but they're not really designed to get you sober. They're designed to take a crap load of your money and give you some basics like first thing you have to do is admit that you're powerless over the substance, and they'll work through the steps or whatever. But they're not really putting that effort in. They don't hire the people to do that. What they hire them to do is get them into the system, especially for rich people, so that we can get them to the next rehab, which is more expensive, and they can sell it like a car. This one is way different, and here's why. But when you start getting to your 18th, you start getting to your 16th, you're going to some rehabs that they're not letting you leave. This is a much more restrictive kind of a rehabilitation center. And Nick wasn't having any part of that. In fact, I found some evidence that at one of them, he threw a brick through one of the windows. Again, he has described himself, Nick's words, I am a spoiled Hollywood rich elite kid. And because of that, I ditched all of my morals when I was younger. If that's not a quote, it's as close to one as you're going to get. When I read the reports of how the Reiners handled the whole situation, they sounded exactly like parents, any other family members in every Al-Anon meeting. They were doing the best that they can. There isn't a handbook for this. They don't teach you. You get Dr. Spock's baby book. It doesn't say what do you do if your kid is mentally ill and develops a thumping drug problem, including being addicted to heroin for a period of time in his life, choosing homelessness over wanting to work to get sober. That was his choice in a lot of times. And he said this in interviews. He would rather be homeless than be in a rehab that was going to restrict him. Restrict him from what? Doing dope, right? Doing dope. Forcing him to be honest. Forcing him to look at the things in his life that make him want to do dope. If he had gotten with the right counselor that just said, it's got to be hard for you to come from a family where people are famous and you don't seem to be getting the same kind of fame. Does that bother you? If it didn't, I don't think the question that he was asking on the last night of his parents' lives to everybody he met at that party, those questions paint a picture, right? These questions absolutely paint a picture. Hey, what's your name? What's your last name? Are you famous? That's a bizarre question, unless you're Nick, right? Because Rob Reiner's famous. His grandfather, famous. Everybody in his family seemed to be successful except him. But he felt like, well, like a lot of Nepo babies do. My dad's famous. My grandfather's famous. When's my turn? And drugs will steal ambition. They'll push you away from what your goals are. And if you got an allowance of 10 grand a month, hello, Kathy, there's not a lot of pressure to go out and force yourself to be successful, because for a lot of us, people talk about fortune and fame, right? Those things are usually said together. Fame doesn't pay the bills. It just doesn't, right? Fortune pays the bills. He didn't have to worry about the money part of it. That doesn't mean his parents deserve to die, but they're going to paint this narrative. And you watch, I promise you right now. Yeah, you and me both. You and me both, right? This I think happened to a lot of people. My parents raised me by Spock's handbook and later concluded that the man was an idiot. I think a lot of people feel that way. And sadly, look, I've told the story. My parents were loving. We ate every meal together. I can't speak badly about my parents. However, when I was a baby, and I mean a baby, the doctor said, your kid's feet are like this. He's not going to be able to walk and run like other kids because he's very toed in. Science will tell you now that usually stretches out, right, over the course of life. If not, you might toe in a little. The fastest people on planet Earth, those sprinters, look at them. Most of them are like, it wasn't going to stop me from running. But my parents, being parents, went, oh my God, no, my baby's not going to be perfect. Is there anything we can do? You know what they said? Some of you will know what they said. They said, yeah, get a board, take his shoes, and put the shoes, screw them to the board at an angle like this, and then put his feet in it at night when he goes to sleep. That's torture if you look back on it. Now, do I remember it? Is it something that scarred me? I have memories of looking down at the shoes on the board. I don't remember it being traumatic. You know what my memories really are though? Johnny Scoville, every day coming in there, looking over the side of the crib and taking them off. For real, my parents were mesmerized at how the dexterity of their little baby and his ability to get those shoes off. But Johnny Scoville would come in and untie those shoes and take my feet out of it. And sometimes he would run into my sister doing the same thing. They didn't look at it as if it was a they didn't look at it like it was kind. They thought I was being tortured. But a lot of the advice you get, and this is what Rob Reiner said. He said, I listened to everybody that had a diploma. Getting a diploma in rehabilitation or therapy, for some people, they're fantastic. There are some people out there that are absolute magic. Now, whether or not they're running the most expensive clinics on earth, I can't answer that. I can't. But I can tell you this. I know a lot of people that I've worked with whose parents spent millions of dollars trying to get them sober. And then they met somebody, right, that, a junkie, a convict. They met somebody in their life that had an effect on them that no one else did. You must break the child's will by the age of 2, Dr. Benjamin Spock. Yeah, God bless him, right? It's frightening, the things that, if you look back long enough, they would say things like, when kids are teething, you know what the best medicine in the world for teething was? For real? Laudanum. Put a little heroin in your kid's mouth, and that will stop the teething like that. You're damn right it will. I promise you. The teething pain will be gone in a matter of seconds. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. And I'll tell you something else. I joke about this all the time, but it isn't a joke. You know what my first drug of choice was? If Johnny Scoville were here, he would tell you. Vicks Formula 44. And there's enough old people in here. It wasn't red. It didn't taste like cherry. You know what it tasted like? Jägermeister. And the amount of booze that it had in there. And I remember hating it. Like, it was just the worst taste in the world. And my parents would say, just 1 teaspoon, you're going to stop coughing. And they'd say it warms your innards. By the time I was about 8, I loved the taste of that shit. Like, you could buy bottles of it and I'd be nipping on the stuff. And they eventually changed the recipe, removed alcohol and some of the other things that were in that. Because nothing like putting a little alcohol and a little dextromethorphan together. Good times. And I'm not kidding you. We are. It is Christmas Day. I will tell you that, no joke at all. I used to get it in my stocking. Like, we skied over 100 days every single year. As I got older, that number went to 200 days a year. So we drank a lot of cough syrup. And it wasn't like I downed an entire bottle, but I promise you that stuff had an effect. I kind of think being the least famous person in the family would be absolutely perfect. You're still in the club. You don't have to go. Yeah, but for him, I agree with you, Audra in Denver. I agree with you 100%. But not for him, it wasn't. Because there was a lot of pressure of not just the fact that he was in a famous family. Think about where he had people that he called uncle, like Billy Crystal. He went to parties at people's houses. Everybody in his neighborhood, everybody in his life, all of the people that he saw, he met Paul McCartney, he met all of these people. And what did they do when they showed up? They went, oh, Rob, I am one of your biggest fans, right? I love what you do. He sees Mick Jagger, or he sees Paul McCartney, or he sees all of these people that all of your friends are listening to in school. And they walk up and go, oh, Rob, you're a genius, right? The stuff that you do, I loved you in this, I loved you in that. That's a tough thing. I'm not having teething pain, but I am putting some Christmas whiskey on my gums just in case. Well, that's the spirit. You know what? I love the smell of bourbon around Christmas. Something about bourbon, the smell of it reminds me of Christmas. Teething, I heard a cotton ball soaked in whiskey. Yeah, I mean, they were doing that when I was a kid, not my parents. But that was still done all the time when I was a kid. For real. It absolutely will help. It absolutely will help. But I'm about to take a hit of albuterol. Reggae Bubbles, I did about 20 seconds before I went live. I've been struggling. You know what? You want to bum out? You know what I pay for albuterol down here? For real. You know what albuterol runs you? If you just go into a pharmacy and buy an inhaler in Ecuador, it would blow your mind. For what I paid for one in the United States, I probably could buy them for the rest of my life in Ecuador and not pay what I paid for one of them. Honestly, it was under $4 a piece. I think it might have been, if it was not under 4, then it was under 3, but it was right down there. When they said it at first, I went, what? His sister didn't pursue fame, though. I wonder if they talked about these things between the two of them. His sister, if you mean Romy, they didn't get along. They had real issues. And one of the reasons was Romy couldn't stand looking at what he was doing to his parents. His parents were victims, right? Michelle and Rob were victims for years. They didn't become victims the day that he killed them. You've just paid $175 for albuterol. Yeah, that's a lifetime supply in Ecuador. That is a lifetime supply for a couple of people. He's been victimizing them his entire life. He lives in a beautiful guest home, which he's trashed on multiple occasions. He has embarrassed the family. And you know what? I embarrassed my family. Everybody has done something to embarrass your family. But if I did something to embarrass my dad in front of, Elton John, or in front of Paul McCartney, or in front of a party of 90 famous people, not that they're any more important, because they're not. But it's that environment. If you want to, if you wanted to blame somebody, you know who you ought to blame? Hollywood, the entity. Because Hollywood is evil, and this kind of evil. I've said, and I'm not blaming Rob Reiner for this, but he wasn't home, right? He wasn't home. And if you have 4 kids that you're raising, one older than the others, and when you come through the front door, they descend on you, right? We did this to my dad. He would go on business trips, and he was only gone maybe 2 weeks a year, but he would be gone for a week one time, a week another. But when he came home, we would descend on him. And he'd have a gift for all of us that he bought in wherever city he was in. And he would take the time and sit down to talk to all of us. That's a hard thing to do if you're getting up the next day to go edit the movie that you just spent the last 200 days filming. It's a tough environment to raise somebody. And if that somebody suffers from mental illness, and then add to that rampant drug abuse. So you're going to hear people saying that, hey, man, they knew he was on drugs. They didn't do anything about it. They're going to blame Michelle and Rob for their deaths. And the defense team, sadly, is going to do this. They absolutely are going to do this. And they're not going to do it in the sense of the word that they're going to go in there and go, it's their fault, they're dead. But their job is to plant seeds so that the people on the jury go, well, damn, man. I mean, these people could have done something about this. Instead, they gave him a $10,000 allowance when he was tripping on acid, right? That maybe they could have called in somebody then. Instead, the father takes him into a room, acknowledges that the kid's on LSD, and talks to him about the 1960s for 8 hours. Well, you're going to get people on that jury. Maybe you get 1 or 2 that, do we know if Nick is schizophrenic or what the mental illness is? It is being reported that the mental illness was schizophrenia. And it's been reported 2 different ways, hasn't it? The first one was, Cindy G., the first one, they said he recently was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Then in a subsequent video, not titled, hey, let me fix that, but in a video that they were talking about something else, they said he's had it for a while. He wasn't recently diagnosed, but they changed the medications recently. That could just be an accident, right? They're just making a correction. Or it's just how you do things. Because the first one that comes out and says, the kid was just diagnosed with schizophrenia. Statistically speaking, way more people are going to see that than are going to hear you on the next video that doesn't have a sensational thumbnail. Less people are going to hear you fix it. In fact, since most people don't watch for more than about 3 to 20 minutes, depending on what kind of content you do, I do an hour and a half show. My view time for as an average will be about 38 minutes. Because some people are going to pop in and they're going to pop out. Some people stay the entire time. But what happens is, it's like I said the other day, I did the show on Epstein, and someone said, it would have been a better show if you showed the photos. Well, I did, but you would have had to hang till about 1 hour in, right before I got to doing that. This happens constantly on YouTube. You realize how many people have said to me in the last 4 months, wait a sec, you're talking to Reese again? If you just sort of pop in and out, if you don't pay attention to something daily, well, on TMZ, most people don't. Most people are not daily TMZ watchers. There are people that are, but most are not. Most are watching people that they identify with, people that they really enjoy. They got content creators that they know personally. But when TMZ puts up a thumbnail, they go, oh man, it's TMZ, right? Yeah. Great comment too. Chances are Nick wasn't taking his meds, but of course Jackson will say he was. You're right. And so will TMZ. TMZ said they changed his medications, and this was a problem. It was reported, widely reported, that they gave him 2 things that he had to do if he was going to continue to stay at the house. They were ready to kick him out. They had said to a bunch of friends, particularly Michelle, that Michelle Singer-Reiner, that they were at the end of their rope, that they were ready to kick him out, that they couldn't have him in there anymore, that it was getting scary. So there were 2 ultimatums. One was he had to stop his substance use. Doesn't sound like condoning drugs. The second was he had to take his medication. It has been my experience that people who self-medicate learn to like the feeling of self-medication, right? It's controllable. If you're not feeling exactly right, smoke another one. It's not like taking a pill, waiting 45 minutes to an hour to see what's going to happen. You take a hit off of a pipe of meth and it's going to your lungs. People argue with me about this, but you can do a little research. The fastest delivery system to anything in your body is your lungs. The reason that nicotine is often described as just as addicting as heroin is because if you go, that's going to double the dopamine in my body on one hit. And it does it faster than just about anything on earth, right? If you're smoking meth as a way to get it into your body, it is going to absolutely go like this, right? A lot of schizophrenics only need, is that clonazepam, Renee Bubbles, or is it clozapine? That one I've not heard of. And they medicate them far beyond that. You know what? They use Seroquel, they use risperidol, they use Thorazine. There's a lot of drugs that they use. And I think one of the reasons is that I agree with you. Most people, yeah. So that's not a substance I've heard of, but I will have to look into that. I hate it when there's a drug that I haven't heard of. But for most of these people, they're going to fight the medication, and they're going to fight the medication because risperidol almost killed your dad. I have bad risperidol stories. Unfortunately, they're not mine, and to share them would mean I'd be outing somebody that I don't want to share stories about. But I have someone that I love and that I've known for a really long time that had absolute horrific. I had to, no lie. Like I was talking to this person, and they had tics, unbelievable amounts of them. Eyes doing this one, and I just said, "What are you doing? Like, what's changed?" And he said, "Well, they got me on a medication." I'm like, "Bro, you got to get off this." And his family was giving him all kinds of hell. He's like, "Well, I got to take my medication." I'm like, "You got to take a medication. You don't have to take one that's doing to you what this does." Like you, and he went in and bitched. And I've known this guy now, God, 30 some odd years, and he's right as rain. He's absolutely perfect, but you have to get the right medication. And risperidol does that to a lot of people. Yes, that's exactly what was happening to my dad. And he had to fight his sister to stop it. That's very often the case. Because when you say this medication is doing X, Y, or Z, they go, yeah, but you're calmer. Well, F you, man. Like I got to give up this to get that. And it's the reason that what I was getting at a moment ago. Hello, NDR. Merry Christmas. It is the reason that there is such a broad spectrum of substances that they use to treat this. Because some people will take risperidol and not get tics or not get any kind of affectations. There are people that can take Thorazine for short periods of time and don't instantly go into the T-Rex Thorazine shuffle kind of thing. And I'm not picking on anybody. This is what that stuff does. There's actually a disease, and there's a name for it. Somebody will put it up because you guys are smarter than me. But there is actually a disease or a syndrome or whatever. When you take Thorazine too long and you start doing this number, there's a name for that, where you literally cooked your brain with Thorazine. And Seroquel is unbelievably strong, right? Not if you need it. It's kind of like giving Ritalin to somebody that it actually has ADHD, and they calm down and they become quite focused, right? They're not bouncing off the walls. Give that same Ritalin to somebody that doesn't have it, and they look like they've been snorting blow for 2 hours. Because sometimes it changes the brain chemistry enough. so that it mellows you out. I knew a girl that you could give a Valium to, and it looked like she smoked crack. She would just start bouncing off of the walls on any benzo. It was bizarre to me. There you go. Look at this. See, I told you. I told you. Tardive dyskinesia. Tardive dyskinesia. This is the syndrome that is caused by someone taking Thorazine and being damaged by it. And lawsuits out the wazoo. They're suing. They have class action lawsuits now against Seroquel. Right now, there are, for some people, Seroquel is an absolute miracle. But that's kind of the nature of big pharma, isn't it? I mean, they say the side effects only might happen in 1 to 2% of patients that take this. In the minds of big pharma, that's fine. It's a very small number, and it is. But if that 1 to 2% becomes suicidal, I don't give a shit that it's 1 to 2%. If it's one of my friends or one of my family who now wants to take their own life because of something that they're putting in their body, that to me is frightening. And one of my biggest problems with psychology, psychiatry, with all of it is the first thing you should say when someone walks through the door is, what are you eating? How much are you sleeping? Do you exercise? Do you journal? How much television do you watch a day? How much time do you spend in front of screens? If you don't talk about any of that stuff, not eating correctly, if your diet is nothing but sugar, if you are abusing the crap out of yourself and you're getting 2 hours of sleep at night, that needs to be taken into account. And we don't do that. There's nothing holistic in the approach. And I'm no rocket scientist, but the person that actually helped me get sober said to me, well, the first thing you got to do is start eating right. The hell are you doing? You know what I mean? You eat 9 nutty bars a day. We call them Zuzus and Wham Whams inside. He's like, you bring them to work. You bring them to lunch. You eat them before you go to bed. He's like, damn, dude. Sugar's a drug. It does wild things into the body. You got to stop doing that. Stop drinking diet drinks, right? The amount of chemicals that they put in diet drinks to make you feel like you're getting sugar, that stuff's poison. I'm not making that up. Google it. Replace that with water. And he started to go through this. How much are you sleeping? I go, I sleep a lot, man. He's like, you never sit up at night reading, dude? You read a lot. I go, I read to go to sleep. He's like, there's a difference between reading to go to sleep and reading until 2 a.m. So he made me start a journal, writing down everything I ate each day, writing down when I went to sleep, how much exercise was I doing. And when I changed all of those habits, I was able to be successful getting off heroin for the first time in my life. And he doesn't have any degrees, right? He's doing life in prison. He didn't get out of the 11th grade. He's the smartest man I've ever met, but he is self-didactic, I think they say, right? He taught himself everything. I'm terrible about Diet Coke, unfortunately. Kathy, have you ever done any research about it? I like you, hon. Please do some research. I promise you, folks. Hey, here's a great piece of advice. This is Tommy Scoville 101. If you look on the back of a can of something that you're drinking, hey, Merry Christmas, Louisa. If you look on the back of a can of anything that you're drinking, and it has the ingredients listed out, and then the last ingredient is this big. It's 6 times bigger than every other ingredient. And it says something that you can't pronounce, like contains phenylketonuria. Big ass name with a bunch of syllables. There's a reason that they had to put that 3 times bigger than everything else in there, right? Because it's a poison. I'm sorry, that's the truth. You do research on why it's that big on the can. Nothing else is, right? They put caffeine in there. They don't have to put caffeine that big. Why does that whole phenylketonuria thing on the back? Yeah, it messes with glucose. It messes with everything. And it is designed, right? It is designed to make you want more of it. You don't meet a lot of people that go, yeah, you know what? I drink Diet Coke once or twice a week. I mean, they're out there. But people that are Diet Coke drinkers go through that crap like a junkie. And it's not your fault. It's because it's designed in a lab to make you want to drink more of it. It's amazing what fake sugar will do to spike in your body. Hi, I'm new here. My bestie just told me about the channel. My daughter is an addict. It's brutal. And yes, soda is bad. Marilyn, welcome to the boat. And is that a picture of the Marilyn on there? Kind of looks like that might be her standing on a subway. I need new glasses, but that does look like it might be Marilyn. I am glad that you are here. Welcome to the boat. And I am I'm an addict. My brother's an addict. Just about everybody that I have spent any time with in my life is. It can get under control, I promise you. Marilyn, I shot heroin for 30 years. And I get phone calls these days. My mother will call me and go, I got a friend at church that's about to give up. Yes, it's the real Marilyn. I love it. I'm a big fan of the real Marilyn. No joke. Big fan of the real Marilyn. And that would be the Johnny Scoville, Chase the Heat. He is a drug addict as well. He is my brother. My mom will call and say, there's a friend I have at church and she's at wit's end. She's given up on her kid. It's killing her. He's been on dope for 10 years. I'll go put her on the phone, right? Put her on the phone. It's a tough battle. It really is. But Marilyn, if you're ever sitting around doing nothing, get your daughter to go look at some of the older shows. The first 2 years, all we talked about was drugs here. And I'm not like, hey, go get high. Talked about recovery and about addiction and things like that. We have a slightly different approach here than other people. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of those things. But it's kind of an important thing to surround yourself with people that have spent a little bit of time in your moccasins. You know what I mean? When you're around people that aren't going to judge you because of your addictions, it's kind of amazing the things that can happen. I was saved by a black guy in a federal prison. And the odds of that are pretty slim, to be honest with you, because we're not supposed to be friends. Like, they get really pissed off when the racists talk amongst each other. But I talk to them every day for years. Diet soda also slows your cognitive capacity as time goes on. Yeah, that's an absolute fact. And she adds, Trump's favorite is Diet Coke. I find that frightening. I mean, I really do. But I find it frightening for anybody. It's a scary thing. Today is a tough day. It is. And this is a tough day for addicts, and it's a tough day for people that aren't. The holiday season is rugged, right? In fact, we do way more content here during the holiday season than we do any other time of year so that people can come back. Thank you, I will try, but she is completely refusing any intervention or help. We have been trying to encourage her to change her life for years. I was that dude too. Here's something that is a very interesting concept, and without knowing what she's addicted to, and you don't have to share that with the world. But I've talked about this. When this show started, like 4 years ago or something like that, I think this is our 5th Christmas. So like 4 years ago when I started this channel, I believed that if you were not sober, as in you're not doing anything, then you're not sober. And you're just trading one thing for another, or you're doing any of this. It's just, right? And then I started working with people, and I worked with literally thousands of them, and have talked to so many people for a very long time on what it takes to get sober. And I met a guy. I read books on harm reduction and all that stuff, and I just thought, you know what, you're sober or you're not sober. And I met a guy that said to me, I drink a 1/5 of bourbon a day. He said, unless something else is on sale, and then I'll drink vodka or whatever. He's like, I prefer bourbon, but I'll drink anything. But I drink a 1/5 a day, right? If you're in South America, that would be a liter, right? It's 32 ounces, 32 shots. And I said to him, you drink 32 shots of bourbon a day? And the guy's got a job. Like, he would go to work. He was functioning. And he said, yeah. He goes, that's so much farther than you're ever going to be able to get somebody clean and sober for. And I couldn't think of a damn intelligent thing to say. I really couldn't. So I said to him, could you do 4 less? Seriously, would it kill you to do 4 less? What if you did 28 shots instead of 32? And he went, maybe. I said, try it. Now he drinks a pint, 1 pint of beer, 16-ounce beer a day. Now, I could bust on him and say, hey, you're not sober. There's another guy that used to be a crack smoker. He said he used to do about an 8-ball a day. It's 3.5 grams of crack. That's a lot of crack. And he's got off crack cocaine. He did it by starting to smoke pot. And it's not like he smokes it all day long like you would crack, but he has come on the channel and said, weed saved my life. And I remember the audience attacking him. Now, the audience doesn't anymore because now I talk a lot more about harm reduction. But guess what? I don't care if you're trading a drug like heroin for a drug like weed. Yeah, you traded one drug for another, but that's a hell of a trade, right? Heroin will kill you. Weed might make you lazy. There's a lot of other things, but it isn't going to kill you. Marilyn Tommy has a great saying. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. It's true. It's true. The addict feels like everybody on planet Earth is judging them. And not for nothing, most of us do, right? I mean, most people who aren't using have a hard time looking at someone who's an addict and just going, why don't you just stop? Right? I mean, how hard is it? Just stop. No one wants to be an addict. Nobody enjoys being an addict. And if they tell you that they do or that they are, they're lying to you. Trust me on this. So no one enjoys that. So why do they keep doing it? Because it fills a need. They're self-medicating for some reason. There were things in my life that I couldn't come to grips with. You know, you do. I'm a convicted bank robber. The guilt that puts on you for your family that had to read that shit in the paper and all of the other stuff that comes with that. And I was a junkie for 30 years. The people that get victimized along the way. I also had some things happen to me when I was a kid, not from my family, but I had some things happen to me as a kid that I wasn't able to say out loud until about the last 3 or 4 months of my life. But I use substances to make those things go away. Right. For me, my drug of choice was opiates, particularly heroin, but I would take any opiate. Painkillers, they kill physical pain and they also kill spiritual and emotional pain. And it keeps you from having to deal with things that make you feel a specific way. The people that have never been addicted think that drug addicts spend all day long in a happy haze. They spend all day long feeling normal. The drug makes you feel normal. When you're not on it, you're in a haze of guilt, shame, all of the other stuff. And the drug takes that away. So it's hard for the addict, especially when they think that everyone else on earth is judging them. It's the reason that group therapy, it's the reason that people coming together who say, yeah, I know what you're going through. And they don't go, wait, you're doing how much? Or, we have loved her and at times enabled her. Tough love at times, but always loved her through it all and kept picking her up. And she is now worse than ever. She lies about everything. Well, lying is the fruit of addiction, right? That's the fruit of addiction. It's also the number one symptom. Addiction is a disease. If you have diabetes, you get dry mouth, you urinate a lot. Depending on what disease you have different symptoms. One of the biggest symptoms for addiction is lies, and you have to lie, right? You have to lie. Sadly, that's just the truth. It's one of those situations where, I mean, we'll use me as an example, so I'm not, so that I'm not picking on anybody else, right? If just an average day for me as a junkie, my phone would ring and it would be my dad and he'd go, hey, Tommy, what are you doing? I can't tell him the truth, right? There's no way. And my dad's a communicator, or was, he's passed, but he was a communicator. He was a communicator much like I am. And my dad wasn't looking for nothing. My dad would go, what are you doing? So I would say, I'm getting ready to go in the car. I'm going over to a guy named Ken's house. I'm going to help him move some furniture. That way I don't have to deal with my dad for the next 3 or 4 hours, right? Everything has to be a lie because anybody says, what are you doing? Hey, why are you late? Or any of these things. Why are you late? I was sitting in a parking lot at Home Depot waiting for the guy that delivers my dope. He said he'd be there in 15 minutes. He took an hour and a half. Everything that someone asks me, the answer will tell them that I'm a junkie and exactly what I'm doing in my life. It's really an ugly thing. It really is. But that's the symptom of the disease of addiction. And the sad thing is, if somebody has diabetes, it's not screwing up your life, Marilyn, right? They have to stick themselves with an insulin syringe. They have to test their blood sugars. This is one of those things that people have to do. But it doesn't affect the people around them. If someone is a drug addict, and on the same note, if someone has mental illness, right? And addiction is a form of mental illness. Don't let anybody bullshit you on that. But either way, addiction or mental illness, my disease now affects everybody around me. My symptoms, like lying, screw up with my sister, my brother, my mother, my father, all of my friends. By the way, on top of that, I need to come up with money every single day. My habit got to over $700 a day, so I became a very good thief, right? But if you go to steal something and you're going to go rob something and cops are already there, or you go to rob something and your car won't start, or any of these things, you're not going to go out and steal on foot. Now you have to con somebody. Now you have to call a family member and tell them a lie, which sucks. But this is the symptoms of that disease, which it's brutal, right? It hurts other people. But to hear you say that, we continue to love her, we continue to help picking up the pieces. There's a lot to be said. Like I had people in my life that loved me who would say to me, I don't believe you, right? I would say something and they'd go, I don't believe you. I love you. It doesn't change that. But your disease makes you lie. And I'm not judging you for it. It is what it is. But if you continue to bullshit me, there's not much I can do to help you. And along those lines, hey, Tommy, I'm late. I'm going to watch from the beginning, but I wanted to wish you a very Merry Christmas. I mean, hey, to you too. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. There were times where you get really down and out, and people would say, you know what? I'm not going to give you money. I'll help you though. Tell you what I'll do. We will head to a store, and you can I'll buy you some groceries. And they'd spend $200 so I'd have enough food to eat for a month. It's just a lovely thing to do. And when they took off, I'd take the receipt back and say, hey, my wife just went shopping and I had already picked all of this stuff up. We had the same grocery list. Can I return this stuff? You got the receipt? I do. Do I need that food? Yeah, but not as bad as I need heroin. If you help somebody, because we all enable people by accident. So I would say to people, yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to get you food. I'm going to take the freaking receipt, right? And there are things I'm going to do straight up. I'll get a Sharpie and write on everything that I got you. Do not return. For real. Because the only way those people are going to end up eating any of this stuff is if they can't sell it. And that's sad, but it is a reality. And it's one of the most insidious diseases on planet Earth. But I believe we're getting better at taking care of people. The number one cause of death in America today is overdose from drugs. That is a terrible thing, but it is a benefit only in that there's no one left in America whose life hasn't been touched by addiction. There's no family out there that goes, well, we're above that. We're better than that. The other thing about addiction that is lovely is it is the least racist, the least homophobic, the least anything, right? There's no prejudice whatsoever to drugs. It will happily addict you if you're a millionaire. It will happily addict you if you're poor, if you're white, if you're black, if you're anything. And that is getting to us to the point where there's nobody left that can avoid this. So conversations like the one that we're having right now might start doing some good. When people realize that this is a mental illness, up until literally the trolls that I have, the people that go after me and call me, a puppy killer or any of the other stuff that they do, that all started over an argument in the first season of The Lifeboat because they said to me, cancer's a disease, idiot. Drug addiction isn't. Well, and their logic was this: you don't choose to get cancer, right? But you choose to be an addict. Well, you don't choose diabetes, right? But you can be born with the precursor of it. And then if you drink way too much sugary beverages and you don't have the right diet and you don't exercise, you can bring it on. If you don't do any of those things, even though the precursor's in your body, you're not going to develop it. Well, that's addiction. It's the exact same thing. Yes, she has done it all. She has also been diagnosed with bipolar, but I'm not even sure if that's a proper diagnosis. I think it all comes down to her addiction. It very well might. I'm not a doctor, and I don't even pretend to be one on YouTube. But there are a lot of people who suffer from bipolar, and it comes in different degrees. Yeah, I throw puppy killer out there because what they call me is usually a child molester, but that gets me demonetized, Ashley. So I throw out puppy killer. They call me anything they can to just to beat on you. It's what trolls do. A lot of people with bipolar disorder use drugs because it levels that out, right? If you think about what the concept of bipolar disorder is, you're either, they used to call it manic depressive, right? That's no longer considered cool. You need to add, more syllables and do all that stuff. But you're either in a manic state where you're sort of looking like you're really wasted and everything, you're busy as hell and ambitious. I'm gonna make a collage of every picture that's ever been taken and cover an entire wall with it. Or you're depressed and you can't get out of bed. Street drugs will keep you in the middle of that. I mean, for real, for a lot of people, they take a drug so that, right, you're going somewhere along the line in between. So a lot of people who suffer from bipolar disorder self-medicate. John, good to see you. A lot of people do. A proper diagnosis would help, but a lot of people who are addicts don't want to go to any kind of a program. Here is what I would say, and you don't need to share anything about your daughter's addiction, but here's what I would say. If by some chance the addiction is opiates, there are people that walk around their entire life afraid of being dope sick, afraid of the withdrawal that they're going to have to endure in order to get sober. Those days are over. medical assisted treatment has evolved to a level where you can get clean without getting sick. And we helped so many people through that concept on this channel, saying, yeah. And saying to an addict, you know how many times I've said to somebody who was addicted to heroin or addicted to any of those things, hey, here's the deal. You don't have to get dope sick. And they'll go, yeah, I do. I go, I promise you don't, man. And once that reality is there, once you realize that you don't have to be tortured in order to at least get the chemicals out of your system, you're still going to have to deal with whatever makes you want to use, and that's sometimes torture. Yes, correct. Manic depressant. She's on 2 medications for the bipolar on top of using. And there lies a very large problem, because the medications that they give people for bipolar disorder, when mixed with any street drug, with any drug you're taking to catch a buzz, it's not just that they're not going to work right. It's that they're mother loving dangerous. For real, that is a very dangerous situation. It can have an absolute, it'll just have a very different effect. Those drugs become dangerous when mixed with street drugs. And I don't care whether the street drugs are, are M30 pills, which is what everyone's doing on the street these days, which is just, people say fentanyl or fetty. That's what everyone is. It has become a, it's one of those catch-all terms now. Like someone says Kleenex, no matter who the tissue is made by, right? But there's not as much fentanyl on the street as there used to be, because it's way cheaper to make the new replacement versions, right? It's a very different environment now. Iso and phytonitazines or nitazines, we're seeing way more of those on the street, but it's a bitch of a drug to test for. So if they see somebody and they do a test in their body and they have a large amount of morphine in their body, no one's doing morphine. But if you take fentanyl or you take any kind of synthetic into your body, you take heroin into your body, it is going to change what you took into morphine in the body. And that's how it processes out through. In fact, if you do heroin 6 hours later, you can't test for it. You can test for 6 monoacetylmorphine, but only for about the first 6 to 7 hours. After that, you're just going to test for morphine. So a lot of people are having fentanyl written down on their death certificate in spite of the fact that they're not dying on fentanyl. That drug is going away for cheaper drugs that, believe it or not, are way more dangerous, which is a terrifying concept. But nitazines, iso and phytonitazines are, depending on what recipe they're using, anywhere from 10 to 30 times stronger than fentanyl. And fentanyl allegedly is about 50 to 100 times the strength of most street heroin. So we're talking about some really ugly stuff that's on the street these days. And they don't have legs, is a term that addicts use. And what that means is that, like on heroin, the good stuff back in the day, you could do heroin, and about 8 to 9 hours later, you needed to do it again, right? Or at least you would start feeling that not, I'm no longer high, but I'm going to start getting sick. And by hour 16, by hour 18, you'd be in deep shit. With fentanyl, it's a way faster crash. You're going to go start getting dope sick a lot quicker. So they started mixing in basically benzodiazepines, the same family of drug that Valium or Xanax, alprazolam, or any of those things, Audubon, lorazepam, any of those drugs. But the one that they're using is called xylazine. And it was not designed for human beings. It was for equine and bovine. So it was for horses and for cows. And people were doing this when I was, back in the day when I was a user. But they were getting it from what do you call it? Veterinarians. Lots of trank here in Cali, and of course, meth and fent. Trank is the combination of a really strong synthetic opiate and xylazine. The xylazine makes people feel like they're not going to get sick as long. What's the replacement for fent? Like local cooks putting together new chemicals so they don't have to traffic it. What the replacement is called iso. Sometimes you'll hear it called phyto, but only in circles where they know what they're getting. Nits, they used to call it nits, but it's nitazines. I did a show on nits like 3 years ago. I think the first time I did it 2 or 3 years ago. And I said, this stuff's coming. You watch, this is going to replace fentanyl. And it is. And the reason it's replacing fentanyl is it's a hell of a lot cheaper to make. The ingredients are way easier to get, and you know, you can learn to make fentanyl even if you're not particularly bright. Same with methamphetamine. But it is a lot more difficult than to make nitazines. Just about anybody, I mean, seriously, if you got the time and the patience, just about anybody can put that together. Wendy R., I'm glad you're here. It's just too easy to overdose nowadays by design. Yeah. So all of the opiates hit the MU receptor in the brain. And if you overflood the MU receptor, you're going to stop breathing. That's what's going to take you out. You know, when people say overdose, what's happening is you're so relaxed that if someone were to go up and put their hand over your mouth and squeeze your nose, you wouldn't do this. That's why when you see somebody that's on the street and they think that they're overdosing, you take your knuckle, right? You go up and down on their sternum really hard, super uncomfortable. And it's because they're not going to breathe because they're not breathing. You're so relaxed, called a respiratory depressant. Sadly, when you mix xylazine into it, xylazine is also a respiratory depressant. So when you mix xylazine and you mix fentanyl or you mix isonitazines or whatever, now you have two rowdy respiratory depressants and you're putting them directly into your vein. By the way, most of those people probably have a drink or two. So you're adding a third respiratory depressant. And this is why so many people are overdosing and dying. And even worse, because there's very little education on what tranq is and what it does. So you don't do chest compressions. You do chest compressions, Ashley. So, and I'm just telling you from somebody that's brought a lot of people back from the dead from overdosing. I am not a doctor. I was an EMT at one point in my life. But the chest compressions you do if you're getting nothing. If you do sternum rubs and you don't get anything, they don't go, right? But normally if you find someone and they're just going out, the lips are starting to go blue, if you just go up and down and you give them this, or do you just make them really uncomfortable? Like, I'm not advocating any of this, but you see guys that go, give you a good one in the face, right? Smack the bottom of their feet. Anything that kind of jerks the body the same way it would if you go underwater and you try to hold your breath as long as you can, your whole body does one of these. Respiratory depressants stop the lungs from doing that. So it's not that their lungs just go, yeah, I don't need to take any breath. The body's not freaking out about it. The buildup, you don't actually need air. That feeling of like you're going to freak out is a buildup of carbon dioxide. It's not a need of oxygen. So that buildup happens and they don't feel uncomfortable. So you need to make them uncomfortable, right? So they do this one, they shake them, and you get really loud. Start saying, Tommy, right? And you do this because you're trying to, because once that body does that thing, they're going to take a breath. If they're not breathing at all, yeah, you start with chest compressions. And a lot of people say, you don't need to do, you don't need to breathe into someone's mouth anymore, hands only. The reason they say that is because most people don't know how to do CPR. If you can do both, when the ambulance shows up, they're not just doing chest compressions. They're going to take a ball, get, a bag valve mask, and they're going to basically use that to breathe into someone's mouth like the old days, right? Because that's the best case scenario. It is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, right? You want to get air in there. But if you can't, keep the blood moving around. It's better than nothing. Tommy, is the addictive feeling you get with food addiction the same as drug addiction? What is the difference? It's a great question. No, they're not even close to the same. But the effect of them are the same, right? So the addiction to something like an opiate, you're going to get sick as hell if you don't take the opiate, right? And your brain is going to tell you that life sucks and you're going to feel all the guilt and everything else. But have you ever heard the term comfort food? There's a reason for that, because you're going to get releases of dopamine, depending on what you're eating, oxytocin, right? That love chemical, you can get that from chocolate. So people eat to make themselves feel better. They eat and they get a release of chemicals. That's why the addiction happens. Sugar's a bitch that way, because sugar does all kinds of stuff for brain chemistry. But that's where what we mean when we say food is an addiction. It isn't an addiction in the same sense of the word as you're going to get the shakes, but you're going to start feeling miserable because it's designed to do this. And I know that everything I say sounds like, boy, you really need to get to South America. Bless you all. Thank you for helping me through this rough day. I fear I am going to lose my daughter. She is likely going to jail very soon. Marilyn, if I didn't go to jail, you'd be listening to somebody else. Jail may be the best thing that ever happened to your daughter, and that's a shitty thing to say to a mom. I'm sorry to say that. But jail saved my life, and I know a dozen people that would say the same thing. The one thing that is lovely about jail is it will eliminate the ability to continue to use. It makes it very, very difficult to continue to use. And even if they're able to, right? If God forbid that she ends up in jail, if she does come here, because I will give you a lot of advice on all of the things not to do with a kid who's in jail. God bless you, Marilyn. Thank you for coming by here. And I'm going to say a prayer for you and your daughter today. You have my word. Yeah, Pete Taylor. So the addiction to food, and the sad thing is this: we have chemists in the United States who are designing food to do exactly this, right? You're going to get that rush, and then you're going to absolutely drop. And it's designed to make you eat more. You know, Lay's potato chips. No one can eat just one. Come to a country that none of that stuff is put into. I got a bag of potato chips up there that we're going to throw out. You know, we buy them and you eat it and you forget about it because it's a completely different thing when you're not getting all of the chemicals that are designed to make the company bigger, to make them sell more product. Legalize says, yes, you do chest compressions when you get no pulse. That's why I'm still here. Someone cared. God bless it. I love that. Hugs, Marilyn. A lot of people here. By the way, Marilyn, let me help you out real quick with this one before you leave. Here we do this, right? We do this right here. And if you see people doing this for you, this means thoughts, prayers. If you're someone that prays, we're praying for you. There are people that don't believe in prayer. It means that it's a virtual hug. It's good thoughts. It's all of the things that we can do to try and help the best we can from a distance. But you know what? Connection just isn't the opposite of addiction. It's the opposite of everything shitty. So if you feel yourself spinning out of control as a mom, come on back here. I don't care what the show is about. We could be talking about anything, and we'll just sort of yank the e-brake and start talking about drugs. That's what I started this channel to do. I cover true crime. I cover a lot of stuff, but if somebody brings up addiction, we usually change the subject real quick and talk about addiction. So God bless you. Thoughts and prayers for your daughter, and have the, well, I will be praying for you. I promise you. And so will the boys at the rehab center I go to. We have a prayer list, and we'll have 30 people that recently got off of dope all praying for her as well. So hang in there. And if you need us, you know exactly where to find us. So Pete Taylor, the problem becomes, and this is a super important thing for everybody to listen to. If you are using anything to make you stop feeling some kind of way, you're an addict. And I don't care if it's your phone. If you feel the need every 5 minutes to check for something, right? If you feel the need to check your phone, you're getting something from that. They coined the term in Silicon Valley when they were first coming out with Facebook. It's called a dopamine hit. It's disgusting, but it's called a dopamine hit. So it can be your phone. If you're spending 4 hours a day on Instagram, what are you escaping from by going to Instagram? And I'm not busting on you, but anything you're doing to avoid the feelings of life, to avoid actually dealing with what's going on every day in your life and in your existence, if you're doing something to not think about or to not feel something, you're addicted. I mean, not if you do it once, but if it's something you do every single day, I promise you that is an addiction. And we are literally living in a time where 80% of this planet is addicted to something. And I used to say on the channel all the time, when the epidemic was really getting bad and the overdoses were starting, I used to say, and people would look at me like I had something growing out of the middle of my forehead. I said, we're going to get to a point where we look back and go, boy, we were really a lot safer when everyone was doing heroin. And people would go, geez, man, there'd be a lot more people alive today if we had heroin on the street instead of, and I'm not advocating for heroin, I promise you. All I'm saying is it's business. Everything is business. Everything is money. You got to grow a poppy, right? You got to grow a poppy. You got to pay someone to go out and cut the bulb on the poppy. You got to scrape the sap off the sides of it. Then you got to take it in. You got to process it. Or you can just buy the chemicals like you're making a cake, and you can put together something. And if you want to make it stronger, make it stronger. You can keep doubling, tripling, quadrupling. How do you think we have carfentanil? That's just where you take fentanyl and you make it so damn strong that it will knock down a pachyderm. And the people that you'll hear all the time, I got a friend on the street who OD'd on carfentanil. No, they didn't. I'm sorry, they didn't. Carfentanil doesn't show up on the street because a grain of it will kill you. Nobody can shoot any amount of that and not die. It's made for pachyderms, elephants, 8,000 pounds of muscle, 4 knees. It's certainly not designed for human beings. And you can't pulverize it enough to cut it, right? If you took 1 grain of it, like the size of a grain of sand, and you pummeled it down, you'd have to put it into 2.2 pounds, right? You'd have to cut it into a kilo a cut. And that little thing that you crushed up is going to be in one person's shot. The rest of the people are going to get baby laxative, inositol, or whatever the hell you cut with it, right? You're right, and it sucks. I know and it's hard because people go, well, all you got to do is eat organic. If you're rich, right? It's a very difficult thing to eat organic in the U.S. because the places that sell it cater to very, very wealthy people. Yeah. We've arrested all of the good people, and now it's cartel only. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. There's never a time when I was an addict where if they brought a supply of the drug in and 20 people died, or 10 people died, or 2 people died, the next batch wasn't going to be as strong. Because if you kill your customers, they can't buy from you 4 times a day. Every batch of fentanyl that comes across the border is stronger than the previous one. That doesn't make sense. That's why when people go, he's bombing boats. Well, we're at war. More people have died from drug overdoses on this poison than died in all of our wars combined. We're at war. This is chemical warfare. The Chinese send the ingredients to Mexico. It comes across the border. Venezuela is making it. South Korea is making it. India is now getting in on the game because we are. The demand in the United States is so large that the supply is going to get met. It's going to get met by people because it's money. You can make it for damn near nothing, and you can sell it for whatever the hell you want to get, right? And I mean that most literally. Like, it's this much, and I also want your watch. They'll give it to you. P. Taylor, I guarantee you snack more when you're stressed. We all do, right? Because it makes you feel after a great meal. Think about it's obviously an over-the-top example, but think about a Thanksgiving meal. You eat Thanksgiving, right? And you're going to do it at like noon or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, because you want to make sure you can watch the later game and you'll be sound asleep. Everybody in the room is like mouth wide open. And you go, yeah, that's tryptophan. Yeah, I can do it with pizza. You can do it with anything. You eat too much, you absolutely are going to go to sleep. I love coffee too. Coffee is an addiction. I definitely have a coffee addiction. I'm kind of cool with it though. I just said to someone the other day that I miss the days of no cell phones, no video games. I pray for our youth. All we had was outside playing ball, etc. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you better be home by the time the streetlights came on. Right? My parents kicked us out of the house, right? 9 o'clock in the morning, they'd be like, go outside, play. No, kids don't play anymore. We have the first culture on planet Earth where more people die because they eat too much versus people who die from starvation. I mean, that sounds great, but it's terrifying because it isn't just that we're all friggin' gluttons. It's that they're designing the food to make you a glutton. They're designing the food so that you have to continue to eat more. If not, you're gonna crash. You're gonna feel like shit, and that's by design, and that's terrifying. All right, people, I've got another show I'm going to be doing later, and it's going to require a few hours of research. So I'm going to wrap this up. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I would like to say a special thanks to Marilyn for your honesty and for coming in. And MJ, thank you for telling her about the boat. Boy, it tickles my fancy when somebody says, my bestie told me about your channel. I swear to God, people, that's better than a paycheck. My dad had a very specific whistle when it was time to come home. Oh, God, I hope Johnny Scoville is still in here because that would just tickle the hell out of him. Because my dad had a special whistle. He did it with 2 fingers, and you could hear it 9 miles from our house. And that's usually about how far away we were. We grew up in the sticks. So when we were out playing, I mean, we had hundreds of acres of land. Right? We grew up in the sticks. We couldn't see our next door neighbor until you drove over the hill. But we would be so far away that you couldn't see the house. But boy, oh boy, you could hear my dad's whistle. Joanne, goodbye. My dad could whistle, and he could whistle tunes like that. I can't whistle. It's one of my pissed me off. I grew up listening to my dad. I was always amazed. I would look at him doing it, and he could whistle songs. But my dad could whistle with his fingers, without his fingers. He was a very talented guy that way. I play the harmonica pretty good though. All right, people. I'm Tommy, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you for spending Christmas with me again. Kathy Clarinet. I think this is our 3rd together. looking out at a lot of names I've seen year after year, and it tickles me. It really does. And I will see some of you this evening. If I don't, I certainly am not going to be offended. I hope everybody is connecting. Where will I be later? I will be right here later. Do you mean like where in the world? I'm in Ecuador, going to the beach here shortly, but I will be right here tonight. I am doing 2 shows a day through most of the holiday season. Tommy, a coffee addiction is a beautiful alternative to the past addictions. Merry Christmas to you. That's so much better an addiction, right? It really is. And I mean, I don't drink it all day long. I'm good for 2 or 3 cups. But what show? Right here, The Lifeboat. What will be the name of it? I don't know. I never put them up until but come back here at about 8 o'clock to 8:30 East Coast time, and you will find me right here on The Lifeboat. Yeah, there you go. There you go. No duh involved. I used to bounce around to a lot of shows. Honestly, it's not as silly a question as you think. These days, I'm usually just here, or I do have another channel, but I don't think we're doing anything tonight. Terry McMullen. Speaking of a lot of Christmases, I don't think Terry's missed one. There he is. Hey Terry, I know this is a hard Christmas for you, brother. You're in my thoughts and prayers, as is your family. Please give my best to your wife and to your son. Tell him Uncle Tommy says what's up. All right, people. Between now and this evening, put a little love in your heart, and make no mistake, connection is the opposite of every bad thing on earth. Let's connect. I'm Tommy. God bless. We'll see you on the next one.